I can't really think of any good recent bourbon news to kind of talk about. Ryan, do you know of anything?
We could talk about how I got a bad batch to the Elmer.
Always find what you love at Total Wine & More. With so many great bottles to choose from at the lowest price, it's easy to find your favorite Cabernet or a new single-barrel bourbon to try with some help from one of their friendly guides. And with every bottle comes the confidence of knowing you just found something amazing. With the lowest prices for over 30 years, find what you love and love what you find only at Total Wine & More. Curbside pickup and delivery available in most areas. Visit TotalWine.com to learn more. Spirits not sold in Virginia and North Carolina. Drink responsibly and be 21. From their bar to yours, Chad and Sarah of the popular YouTube channel It's Bourbon Night bring you their favorite at-home old-fashioned mix with the new Elemental Elixir's Golden Hour Syrup. It's a custom-made syrup with notes of bold black tea, warm spices, and orange zest. All you need is your favorite whiskey and ice. No bitters needed. One bottle makes 16 drinks, so that's only $1 a cocktail before you add your own whiskey. They can also be enjoyed in other cocktails or spirits, mocktails, coffee, tea, and anything you can think of. It's crafted locally in Lexington, Kentucky, and you can get your bottle now at whiskeyambitions.com. Do you ever pour yourself a bourbon, swirl it around, and then start struggling to come up with tasting notes? And perhaps you're also looking for a good Father's Day gift idea. Well, you can now solve both with a kit from Knows Your Bourbon. And unlike other nosing kits on the market, Knows Your Bourbon kits feature real ingredients for the most authentic aromas. You can smell real Tahitian vanilla bean instead of some synthetic aroma that's just made from chemicals. So head on over to knowsyourbourbon.com and enter code BP10 for 10% off your order. Ed Bly and Rising Tide Spirits are back again with a new release of Old Stubborn Bourbon. And this release of Old Stubborn is a premium hand marriage of 10, 11, and 12-year cask strength, barely filtered pot still bourbon. It comes in at a staggering 123.8 proof, and the flavoring grain for this one, which the last one was wheated, but this time it's now rye. Rich, sweet, and bold with a long finish that's sure to be another eye-opener. You can order online at Sealbox or thebourbonconcierge.com, and you can even purchase in person at Revival Vintage Spirits, and even now with very few select stores in Kentucky. You can get it now while you can, but be sure to do it because it's not going to last long.
Play Whiskey Wednesday, Round 11, the memory game. Until June 26, each week you can win one of our 12 incredible grand prizes. Select $2 at checkout. And if they match on drawing night, you'll win that bottle. Not a match? No worries. You still score a Weller 12-year. Every $5 ticket gives you 5 chances to win, including 4 weekly bonus prizes. Get your tickets now at give270.org. Charitable Gaming License ORG 0002703.
And we're back with another episode of the Bourbon Pursuit Podcast. My name is Kenny, and today we've got Ryan on the show. And Ryan, we're going to be talking about something that's not particularly just all about Kentucky.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk to our next guest. They're down in Sarasota. They got an awesome festival going on. We have several festivals here, the Bourbon Fest, and
we've got bourbon festivals happen all the time. You know,
we got bourbon festivals all the time.
The Bourbon Classic,
Bourbon Classic,
everything that's hosted by the folks that are happening over at the Bourbon Trail as well, the Kentucky Bourbon Affair, and then you've got a lot of other just kind of local events that are being sponsored by individual distilleries.
Yeah, but what's cool about this one? It's in Florida. It's sunny and nice and beautiful, which is not always the case here in Kentucky. But they're not only doing bourbon, but they got a lot of whiskeys from Ireland, Scotland. They're doing also Japanese whiskey, so you're going to cover the whole gamut of spirits, in the whiskey industry.
I agree. So today on the show we have Turner Moore. Turner is the president of Whiskey Obsession, and he has his own festival called the Whiskey Obsession Festival. Turner, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
We kick it off every single time asking people about how they either get into bourbon or whiskey, so let the listeners know, what's your story?
Well, I went to college in Virginia at a small private school called Hampden-Sydney. You may or may not heard of. Being a Virginia school, we drank a fair amount of bourbon, and it was pretty much the bottom shelf plastic jug, bourbon. But that treated us well. And at that time, of your life, it's more, I think, about quantity than quality. So I developed an interest in bourbon at that point. But then a few years after I graduated from college, I was introduced to some single malts by a couple friends. One was Bourbon and one was Glenlivet. And my interest really in whiskey in general was kind of ignited at that point with those single malts. I got really into scotches and I started doing a lot of different tastings and events. And then after a period of time, someone asked me to do a tasting back in Virginia at a private club. And they said, really, we have a bourbon crowd. So if you can focus on bourbon for this tasting, that would be great. And I said, absolutely, I'm happy to do that. And then I realized I really know nothing about bourbon. So I spent 6 months doing intensive research and probably went out and bought 25 or 30 different bottles of bourbon, everything I could find. And really, I read some books, read some articles, and I really kind of came back to develop a new appreciation for this thing that I had been drinking 20 years before, but knew nothing about.
I guess, is there a certain bottle that you would favor towards out of maybe those first 30 that you started with? Is there something that really kind of stood out to you as something that was above the best?
Well, the bourbons that I drink now, I like Old Forester and I like Woodford. I like some small distillers. There's one out of Richmond called Reservoir, and they only make 3 products, and their bourbon is fantastic. I like that one a lot. In the American spirits world, I tend to find myself drinking more rye, though, than bourbon. So in the rye world, like Whistle Pig has become one of my absolute favorites in the last year. Angel's Envy rye is always good. Michter's. Fortunately, we've got choices now. 10 years ago, there were not many ryes on the market, and today, there's a much broader selection.
I'm sure you're just like us where you get phone calls or you get text messages from friends and they're taking pictures and sending them to you and saying, should I buy this bottle or should I buy something else?
Yeah, I get that all the time. Or friends at a certain whiskey bar restaurant, I've only got time for 1 or 2 more. We got to go. What should I do?
So talk about the festival. Let's kind of talk about that a little bit.
So, as I mentioned, I really kind of developed this interest and passion for whiskey in the mid-'90s. And by the mid-2000s, I started to travel and go to different events and really kind of focus on it. So I started going to New York Whiskey Fest, Whiskey Live, the Whiskey Extravaganza, which the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society puts on. I've been to the Kentucky Bourbon Ball and Gala events there. And after going to a few of these, I was always searching the internet for tastings and festivals and events here in Florida or even in Georgia. Atlanta's an hour away by plane. So I wasn't finding much. The Scotch Malt Whiskey Society event was really the only other major one in the state. And here in Sarasota, we have a number of wine festivals and craft beer festivals. So we've got Wine, Women, and Shoes and Forks and Corks and the Florida Wine Auction, these big events. And I thought, well, why don't we do a whiskey festival here in Sarasota? We seem to have a crowd that obviously likes wine and spirits, likes food. It's a high net worth community. The venue's called Michael's on East. They're a fine dining restaurant and a banquet center. They have an on-site wine cellar package shop. And I'd work with them on charity events over the years and said, hey, I kind of got this idea. Why don't we start planning for like a year and a half away? And the manager looked at me and said, oh, this is a great idea. Let's do it in 6 months.
It's kind of like
no time like the present.
Exactly. It's right. Like any kind of project manager. It says like, oh, we can get this done in a year and a half. And they're like, well, you've got 6 months until you need to put this out the door.
Right. So I was really surprised that they were that enthusiastic and that they thought we could pull it off. But, we started working on it. Our first event was April of 2013. I had 27 vendor tables and around 160 or 170 different whiskeys. And we probably had 250 to 300 people.
And now that's grown now, hasn't it?
It has. It's grown significantly. So, and in fact, the event is 6 weeks from today. Thursday, March 31st is our panel. Friday, April 1st is the main event. And This year, we're going to have 52 vendor tables. So we've doubled that number. And we'll have probably around 700 guests at the main event, which is getting close to capacity with all those tables and whiskey ambassadors in the room and so forth.
So I was watching, I guess you would call them maybe hype videos on the website, right? You know, some of those things that really kind of get you in as sort of the trailer to kind of see what's to come. Now, what do a lot of people that are coming there as a general audience, like what are they coming away with, or what are they learning about more at the end of the day, and why do they really love coming to your event?
Well, as I mentioned, I've been now to well over 24 whiskey festivals across the country in Atlanta, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, Chicago, New York, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, on and on. And I've kind of taken some of the best elements of those other events and created something I think that really works very well. So this year we're going to have 3 events. Wednesday night is a dance party sponsored by Old Forester and Brown-Forman, and that's just going to be a fun event to bring in a younger crowd. We've got kind of electronic musical guests there, and his name is Brother Tiger. He's a nationally touring musician, and so that'll just be a totally fun, low-stress dance party. The Thursday night panel is unique. It's a sit-down 3-hour class and interactive tasting with a flight of 16 whiskeys. They're 10 mil pours, so they're we are conscious of the amount of alcohol that we're serving in 3 hours or so. But those 16 whiskey samples are presented by 4 distillers and 4 ambassadors. And I've got people who fly in from D.C. and Rhode Island and come down from Georgia and come from the East Coast of Florida and all over. And they absolutely love the panel because the knowledge that is exchanged there, but in a really fun and casual environment, it's remarkable.
They catch one hell of a buzz, it sounds like.
So another quick question about this panel is it more or less like people asking questions and kind of getting answers and insights in the industry, or is it more like a master distiller or a brand ambassador that's leading you in a tasting and making sure you're smelling or tasting the notes that he or she is trying to convey?
Yep, it's both of those things. So the format is all 8 panelists are up on the podium with me, and we arrange the 16 whiskeys from lighter flavors, obviously, to bolder and smoky flavors, so that your palate is maintained throughout the evening. And each panelist gets 5 or 10 minutes to introduce him or herself, the distillery, and whatever the first whiskey is. And usually, they take 5 or 6 or 7 minutes, and then we field a few questions from the audience, and then we move on. But what is great is the other panelists will ask questions of their colleagues up on stage. And there is a lot of banter back and forth and interaction. I got the idea for the panel from a couple places. New York Whiskey Fest a few years ago did what they called Whiskey Weekend. And the main event was Friday night, the grand tasting. And then Saturday morning, you sat in the ballroom and you kept your seat, but all of the classes changed. The panelists throughout the day from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. changed. And there were different tastings and chocolate pairings, and John Hansel spoke, and, all these different things. And I thought that was really so valuable. The grand tastings are great, and the master classes that are like half an hour that happen during those are great at a number of different events. But to be, in a place where you're getting these essentially hours of education that are really in depth, it's remarkable. And what struck me more than anything else, at one of these New York Whiskey Fest panels, there were representatives from half a dozen or more distilleries all up there sharing their stories and their products and talking. And professionally, I'm in investment management. And I was thinking, would you ever see the CEOs of Google, Microsoft, IBM, Apple, and Cisco up there sharing the stage? And the answer is no, because it's a cutthroat business and they're all suing each other. And you could never get them in the same room, much less genuinely complimenting the innovations that each other are coming up with and the contributions to the industry. And it really is a special group of people. Although the spirits business is cutthroat at some level, it's a really human business. And these people interact well with each other. They complement each other. They are excited about the innovations that they're seeing. It's really a neat thing to be a part of.
Well, maybe you can try to pay somebody to have like one Jerry Springer moment. So it's like something they can always remember, right? But another question for you, you kind of talked about a little bit. You said when somebody comes up and they say, we're going to do a tasting and we're kind of start with something that's very light, then very mellow into something that's more bold or more smoky or more flavorful. Kind of give us one example, and I'll let you choose any one of the panelists and kind of like maybe some of the brands of how they would possibly do their tasting if they have 3 or 4 different whiskeys or bourbon that you're going to be doing when you're going through this interactive panel.
Okay, so I haven't quite finalized the 16 whiskeys that we're going to be sampling. But for example, we'll probably start off with Stranahan's Colorado whiskey. And Rob Dietrich is their distiller. So he makes it. He lives and breathes it every day. I love it. I think it's a phenomenal American whiskey, but it's light. It's similar a little bit to like the Yamazaki 12 or Redbreast, Irish whiskey. It doesn't have tremendously bold flavors. It's complex. It's not super bold. So we'll start off with Stranahan's. Then we'll probably do Glenmorangie's new limited edition release, the Milchan. And if you know Glenmorangie, obviously it's a very elegant, delicate single malt Scotch. So in that way, we're kind of wading in, to the shallow end at first. Then we'll make our way through the Larceny bourbon, where we have Maker's Mark 46 cask strength this year. So that'll be kind of in the middle of the pack there. Maker's 46 is a little lighter. It's obviously a no rye mash bill, but it's cask strength, so it's going to be a little bit bolder. And then we'll get into High West Boo Rye, Elijah Craig Small Batch, Michter's Barrel Strength Rye, High West Campfire, and ending up with Ardbeg. The Ardbeg, I think Perpetuum is what we're doing.
What you're getting at is you're not just looking at a bunch of different bourbons, right? Is I think it's great because you're sampling a bunch of different whiskeys. So even if somebody was, maybe stubborn like me and is just like, oh, if it's not, like if it's not bourbon, I don't want it, right? And
the hell of Scotch.
Yeah, right. But I mean, what this does is it gives you that opportunity to go and try a bunch of different things without saying like, okay, I need to go drop another $200 or $300 at the liquor store to be able to sample and try to figure out what is it that I like. But not only that is you get an opportunity to learn from the ambassadors and the distillers at these different manufacturers, kind of what they really see it and how you should be seeing it as well. And that you shouldn't be really comparing apples to oranges here, but you should really just kind of take for each one for its uniqueness and what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. People who've been to other events and been to my event have commented that they really like that range. As I mentioned, I went to the Kentucky Bourbon Ball in Bardstown a few years ago, and that was a fantastic event. And part of the reason I go is to obviously sample these great, whiskeys. I visited 7 or 8 distilleries all around Bardstown and, some iconic names there. But by the end of the night, I got to tell you, I was craving a good smoky single malt Scotch because I could only drink so much bourbon all night.
Especially for those people that have the more depth of palates and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm sure having something to kind of mix it up is something they would enjoy as well.
If you're anything like me, then you can't get enough about bourbon. And that's why I'm a subscriber to Bourbon Plus magazine. Bourbon Plus is a quarterly publication that tells the stories from the heart of bourbon, the farmers who grow the grain, the distillers who labor over the process, and the people like you and me who raise their glasses to celebrate it all. Subscribe to Bourbon Plus magazine today at bourbonplus.com, that's PLUS.com, and use code PURSUIT at checkout for $5 off your subscription. Shopify's already taken the cash register online, helping millions sell billions around the world. But did you know that Shopify can do the same thing at your retail store? Give your point-of-sale system a serious upgrade with Shopify. Shopify's point-of-sale is your command center for your retail store. From accepting payments to managing inventory, Shopify has everything you need to sell in person. And with Shopify, you get a powerhouse selling partner that effortlessly unites your in-person and online sales into one source of truth. Track every sale across your business in one place and know exactly what's in stock. Connect with customers in line and online. Shopify helps you drive store traffic with plug-and-play tools built for marketing campaigns, from TikTok to Instagram and beyond. And get hardware that fits your business. Take payments by smartphone, transform your tablet into a point-of-sale system, or use Shopify's point-of-sale Go mobile device for a battle-tested solution. Plus, Shopify's award-winning 24/7 help is there to support your success every step of the way. Do retail right with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/bourbon, all lowercase, and go to shopify.com/bourbon to take your retail business to the next level today. Shopify.com/bourbon.
Let's move on into the Friday event. So talk about, and this was, that you said is kind of like the main event, right? So kind of talk about the day and what's really happening from start to finish.
And the last thing I'll say about the panel, in the last few days, I've been out and about marketing locally and putting up posters and so forth. And I've run into a few people who work in the industry, either as distributors or bartenders and so forth. And they really love the panel because, one, they're working on Friday nights usually, but two, it just gives them a whole other level of appreciation and depth of knowledge from the makers that they wouldn't otherwise have the chance to get. So it's, it's not just us whiskey geeks. It's, the folks in the industry who are able to learn right along with the rest of us, and it's fun. So Friday's main event, the grand tasting, will have 52 vendor tables, as I said. Some of those are dedicated individual tables, like Glenmorangie and Ardbeg have their own, and Johnny Walker has its own, and so forth. But then other ones are kind of a potpourri from the distributor. Republic National has dozens of great brands. So on one table, they'll have 1792 and E.H. Taylor and Buffalo Trace. Some tables will be a mix. Like in that case, those were Sazerac products. In other cases, they're all, just showcasing one brand in particular. We're going to have around 24 or 25 principals, meaning an ambassador or a distiller, present. And I have honestly only seen that kind of industry support in Las Vegas at the Nth show, which is phenomenal. I think it's the best show in the country, or in New York at Whiskey Live or Whiskey Fest. And all the other events I've been to across the country, they're good events. I got a great range of whiskeys, but the industry doesn't come out as much. And I think part of the reason is, hey, Florida in March isn't a bad place to be.
That's very true.
And, like we were talking about, Sarasota kind of sells itself. So a lot of things are working in my favor.
Yeah, and you got March Madness going on, too. You can enjoy whiskey, some sunshine, and basketball.
Yep, exactly. And, I know, folks come in from out of town and out of state, and they play golf, or, they take the kids to Busch Gardens, and, there's just plenty to do. So guests really enjoy being able to interact with those ambassadors and distillers. And to me, when I go to other events, that really is what makes it special, because you get those little stories, you meet the people, you hear about what they're doing, you get gossip on the industry, you learn more about the spirits themselves. And there's any number of wine tastings or craft beer events where there's a pretty girl pouring your drink and you ask her, oh, what's the mash bill or whatever, and kind of gives you a blank look and you're like, okay, never mind, I'll ask something else. So I really like having the educational component. And, and people get it. And, friends and when people hear about it, they joke, it's like, oh, man, people must get hammered there. They don't. I have really never seen anyone what I would consider overly indulging, because guests are coming, they're paying either $95 or $195, and they're there for education, not for intoxication. You can get loaded for $5, but if you want to learn and appreciate it more, then you're going to take care of yourself and pay attention.
$5, you got to tell me where you're getting your booze from.
Where's this at?
So talk again. You kind of mentioned some ticket prices right there. So I guess kind of talk about the tickets real quick, because I want to jump back into some of the individual classes.
Okay, so Friday night, the VIP entrance is at 6:30, and VIP tickets are $195. That includes that hour early entrance. It's limited to 150 people, so you're not competing so much during that time period. We have around 20 or 22 VIP pours. I know this year we'll have the Hibiki 21 year, and all Japanese whiskey is really hard to come by, so I'm excited that we'll have that one. We're going to have the Snowflake from Stranahan's Distillery. So in some cases, there are things that are expensive. In some cases, there are things that are just very rare, limited edition, maybe not always available in Florida, and so forth. VIP guests also get priority registration for those classes, which we'll talk about in a minute. General admission entrance is at 7:30. The whole event wraps up at 10:30. And with the VIP or general admission ticket, you get a little branded Glencairn glass when you walk in the door, and you can sample as much as your good judgment will let you sample in the time that you're there.
Because I'm looking at it, it says unlimited tastings for over 200 spirits.
Yeah, we're probably up to about 250.
Oh, see, now I think what you got to do next is you got to have like something that's like a passport thing. So you have to go try every single one. You get stamped, right? And then by the end, you have to crawl and make your way to go collect your T-shirt or something.
Somebody had a great idea that if we could create some kind of an app and have like live rating during the event, and you go to a table and you could say, man, this Woodford Reserve or this Michter's bourbon or Heaven Hill or Larceny or, oh man, this is my favorite. And if there's a way to have kind of this live scoring, that's a great idea. I do almost all this myself, and I'm not that technology oriented. So
roadmap for 2017.
Yeah, and if there's a huge whiskey fan tech nut out there, then call me and we'll figure out how
You're
to do
talking to one on the other line.
Well, the wheels are spinning there. So I was just going to say, so you get a little glass when you walk in the door. You can sample as much as you want to. We've got wonderful food. Michael's on East is a fine dining restaurant with great Zagat ratings. And the food is excellent. We encourage people, obviously, eat, drink water, take care of yourself during the event. We also have a companion ticket for $45. That includes wine and food. I don't call it a designated driver ticket because wine is included. And, those are for non-whiskey drinkers. And, in some cases, they're just friends who want to come along and be a part of it.
You should come with an Uber pass, too.
Well, my motto is take your friends and Uber.
Yeah.
So, absolutely. And honestly, I have marked police cars at both entrances. So people see that when they come in and when they leave. And I've got a lot of staff and security around. Anyone who looks like they may be overindulging, we just want to talk to them and say, hey, make sure you're getting home safe and so forth. Because, the whole industry is so focused on responsible consumption. We don't want to have anyone get into trouble in any way. So we were talking about Michael's on East and the food and so forth. So, there are 3 ticket levels in the companion tickets. Sometimes they seem to be some single women who maybe want to come out meeting some whiskey fans, and that's fine.
There you go. It's a lot easier than going to the hotel bar, right?
That's right.
So I want to kind of talk about the classes a little bit more, just because some of them look pretty interesting, right? So the first one that I kind of looked at that really caught my eye, and it's the first one. It's the history of North American whiskey, one sip at a time, and that's from Michael Ring, who's from Brown-Forman. Do you know kind of anything that he's going to be talking about during that class?
Yeah, absolutely. So Brown-Forman is one of my big sponsors. I've got a great relationship with them. They help out with other charity events that I'm involved with locally. Obviously they have some iconic whiskeys. Their distiller from Woodford, Chris Morris, is coming Thursday night to the panel. He also happens to be the chairman of the Kentucky Distillers Association right now. He does like 2 events a year. So it's a big deal that Chris Morris is coming, but he can't make it to Friday. So the local ambassador, Michael Ring, is going to lead this class. And since Brown-Forman also has they own Collingwood Canadian whiskey. So Michael's going to talk about Collingwood, the idea is, that company's been around for well over 100 years. I don't remember exactly when Jack Daniels himself founded the distillery, but something kind of 1870s, as I remember. There's a long history there.
And then the other one that I saw that was pretty interesting was the cigar and whiskey pairing. So I guess, is this something that, you guys going to be sitting there puffing smokes as you're sitting there drinking some whiskey, or how's that going to work?
Yeah, absolutely. So the venue, Michael's on East, is a fantastic complex. It's got a restaurant, dining room. Will actually be in operation that night. We take over the ballroom, and then they have a wine cellar on the other side of the property. So the wine cellar can be split in half. So we'll have classes going on at 8 o'clock in there on each side. And then there's a patio area outside. And the cigar class is the most popular one every year. We have seats for about 35 people, and then another 20 probably stand around. And the first year, Alec Bradley was our cigar partner. The last 2 years, it's been CNC Cigars with their Dram cigar. And this year, just to change it up, I've worked out an arrangement with the Cigar Castle in Tampa, and the owner is coming down, and he is bringing Monte Cristo cigars, and Philip Pepperdine, the Beam Suntory ambassador, is bringing 2 whiskeys. And I kind of think that Beam Distiller's Masterpiece is one, and Bowmore Isla Darkest is the other. Going by memory there, so may not be 100%. But that's a great class because you can smoke cigars outside, learn about these things. In the past, the cigar partner has brought slideshows of the tobacco fields down in Honduras and Dominican Republic and different places, and they get into the whole, the nuts and bolts of the wrapper and the filling, and it really, I'm standing there for 5 minutes, I learned more about cigars than I ever have.
Yeah, I got a personal question. What is for a bourbon drinker, what is a good start for a good cigar pairing? Because I have no clue. I do enjoy cigars, but I don't have any clue what to pair with my bourbon.
Well, that's a good question. These CNC cigars created a line of cigars specifically to go with different spirits. And they have a graphic that has light, medium, and bold. I would probably go with their medium, because they're reasonably priced. They were designed to go in the whiskey world. I would probably start there. Personally, when I smoke a cigar, it tends to be a lighter one because I gave up cigarette smoking 20-some years ago in college. And so I'll have an occasional cigar now. I found, if I have a really, one of those Partagas black sun-grown ones,
yeah.
It obliterates. I love it. It's a phenomenal, but it obliterates whatever you're drinking. And then on the other hand, if you have a really super light cigar, then, what's in your glass is going to overwhelm it. And so, just like any good whiskey, it's all about balance, right?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that.
So the other kind of question that I have as we're going to wrap this up is that I'm looking at a lot of the list of all the different whiskeys that are going to be there. Just reading off, you've got some of the ones that are pretty prominent that you'd see on the shelves: 1792, Benchmark, Buffalo Trace. In the whiskey world, you've got things like Corsair, Clyde Mays, Glen Mirage. You kind of said that. Heaven Hill, High West. Is there any kind of local distilleries around Florida that are going to be there that are going to be partaking in this as well?
There are. So Palm Ridge is a distiller up kind of near the Villages, and they've been going for a few years. Interesting operation. I've been up there. They were one of the first Florida whiskey distillers. It's got a great citrusy Florida character. That one's interesting. There's a new distillery in St. Pete. I think that they're going to be serving a cocktail at the event rather than neat whiskey. But one of the most interesting and exciting ones, and one of my favorites, actually is just north of Tampa from Spring Hill. It's called Wild Buck, and they make a rye. It's remarkable. Just within the last few years, they got up and running. They found a distributor. They're getting shelf space at bars and restaurants as well as retail shops. It's pretty good. I've been to the St. Augustine distillery. I was there this summer, and all their whiskey is still sleeping in the barrels and won't be ready yet for a while. So there's little bits and pieces, that are starting to emerge down in Florida. But it's a real challenge. When we were at Palm Ridge, they use small, 20-gallon barrels. He let us sample maybe 4 months in, 6 months, 8 months, 12, 14, that kind of thing. With this climate and the barrel size he's using at like 8 to 10 months, it's really reaching kind of peak maturation. And when you get to 12 or 14 months, it's overcooked.
Interesting.
And it's remarkable how
Too much heat.
Too much heat. I mean, you can and it's not just too much heat, but up there, it's a couple hours north of us. It's getting closer to Gainesville, and it might be 60 degrees in the morning and 90 in the afternoon. So they're getting a lot of atmospheric changes during the day, and a lot of interaction with the wood. So, but it was fascinating because you can just really see in what a short period of time that barrel reaction, what it's doing, and I mean you can see the color and you can taste the flavor, and it really is remarkable.
Yeah, it's really good to know that there is some whiskey that's happening down in the Florida area, because I think you had mentioned it before we start recording that at some point everybody moves to Florida.
Right.
That's right.
Turner, I wanted to say first, thank you for coming on the show and sharing your story and sharing this. But before we end, I want you to plug your website and where everybody can buy tickets, and again, remind everybody when it's happening.
Oh, great. Thanks. The Whiskey Obsession Festival is 3 nights. It starts Wednesday, March 30th with a dance party. Thursday, March 31st is our interactive panel discussion, where we have a flight of 16 whiskeys presented by distillers and ambassadors. And then Friday, April 1st is the main event with 250 whiskeys available to sample, plus the 6 classes that happen during the event. All the information is on the website. It's whiskeyobsessionfestival.com. And if you hit the tickets tab up in the middle of the bar in the top, it'll take you to Eventbrite, and all the ticketing is online. My phone number is on there. I organize about 99% of this myself, and I'm happy to field any questions and phone calls from people who need to know more about it.
Well, again, Turner, thank you for so much for being on the show. It was fantastic to kind of get an insight onto what's happening in the whiskey and bourbon world outside of Kentucky for once, right? Because we're definitely, I guess you could say, biased or favored towards looking to a lot of this stuff, but we definitely appreciate you reaching out, wanting to come and talk about this on the show. And if you like what you hear, you can always subscribe to us on iTunes. You can follow and like us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all those awesome social media outlets. We try to post on there often and try to keep coming with new content when we're not sitting there plugging out new episodes.
Yeah. Thanks again, Turner. Not that anyone needs another reason to go to Florida, but why not for Whiskey Obsession? That sounds like a great event, especially for us closed-minded bourbon people to broaden our horizons and branch out into the different whiskey worlds. I think it'd be a cool event for listeners. Sarasota and Siesta Key, we vacation there all the time, and it's just a wonderful area. I'd highly recommend people to go to this event.
It's beautiful. There's nowhere else in the state I would live. It's a great place. But, you come down and you can just reinforce your relationship with some of your favorite bourbons. Bernie Lovers will be here from Heaven Hill, and Pam Heilman from Michter's, and as I said, Chris Morris from Woodford. Bourbon is popular for a reason. And,
that's right.
Well, thank you again, and we'll see you all next time.